Now that you've completed a draft of your video resume script and have considered some ideas of what B-roll and other digital assets you might want to use, it's time to map it out in a storyboard. A storyboard may sound fancy or complicated, but it's not. Truly, it can be as complicated or as simple as you want it to be. If you Googled storyboard templates, you'll even find several ready-to-use downloadable templates. Filtering through the different options may be overwhelming, but if you simply look at the common subheadings, you'll discover there's a lot of crossover between templates. You may decide to use a new page for every scene you create, but for our purposes, let's keep it really simple. I'd like to create a simple storyboard using a table in either Word or Google Docs. Really, any program that will allow you to create a table will do. You can even sketch it out on a piece of paper. I often include 5 columns: scene, visual, dialogue, description, and notes. For the scene column, I simply use a number. I number them 1, 2, 3, etc. For the visual column, I include either a picture I plan on using or a screenshot from the video footage I will use. You could even sketch it out with a pencil if you'd prefer. For the dialogue column, I insert the part of the script that coincides with the visual. For the description column, I include any reference to text overlays, music, B-roll, animations, etc. For the notes column, I include any reminders or ideas or notes for the video editor if I'm not editing the video myself. You may prefer to use different column headings, change the wording, add columns, or even delete some of these headings. That's perfectly fine. The point here is simply to create a storyboard to organize the flow of your video resume. How you choose to organize it is up to you. Let's do a couple of exercises together to create a storyboard. First, we'll deconstruct my original video resume. I wrote the script for this video, but I hired a videographer who also did the video editing. So for this exercise, we'll work backwards. This will give you an idea of how you could map out the flow of your video from start to finish. For scene 1, the opening scene was B-roll of a decorative stone wall in the park where we shot the video. The video editor used text overlays of my name and most recent job titles. He started the music in this opening scene, and conveniently, the video length matched the song length. This isn't necessary, but it worked out well in this case. For the notes section, I added that the scene is blurry and the footage is shown in slow motion. If you were to have a video editor produce your video resume and you have a vision of how you want it to look, you'll want to write your ideas and suggestions in the notes for each scene. In scene 2, I begin talking. The majority of this video resume is a talking head format like now. I included the dialogue, my script, that matches the scene. In the description, I added that my name should appear on the screen in the bottom left corner. Again, this is optional, but regardless of where you position it on the screen, it may be a good idea to show your name so that the viewer can more easily remember it. In the notes, I indicated how much of myself to show in the shot and to have me off-center. This video was primarily shot in front of the school where I taught at the time. It had a lot of character and was across the street from a community park where we shot the video. I also added to maintain the music. This may be helpful in case you plan on using different sources of background music. You'll want to be clear which one to use when. In scene 3, we switched from talking head to B-roll. Actually, 2 forms of B-roll. The video editor used a still image of the same stone wall as the background and added B-roll footage of my convocation ceremony on top. Next to the video, he added the date, the name of the ceremony, and the university. This B-roll footage showed a milestone event, but also showed a bit of my personality at the end where I look up and give the peace sign to the camera. In the notes, I added to blur the background image, freeze frame the scene in the B-roll where I was shaking hands, add text overlay, and remove my name from the bottom of the screen. Again, I added to maintain the music. In scene 4, we are continuing with a different B-roll shot, and I simply give the instruction to maintain the blurred image from the previous scene and to add a different text overlay and where to position it. For scene 5, I indicate that we are returning to the talking head footage. I note to add back my name to the bottom of the screen, to use soft transitions between video takes, and to maintain the same song. Soft transitions are different from hard cuts between takes. While a hard cut can appear more choppy, it's a popular technique for content creators since it can keep the audience engaged from the quick changes and reduced pauses in dialogue. A soft transition will use things like dissolves or fades between shots to give a more smooth transition. Soft transitions are meant to merge the end of one scene with the beginning of the next one. We'll explore these options in a future lesson. In scene 6, I indicate a continuation of a talking head format and to add text overlays as the words are spoken. In the notes, I carry forward some of the instructions from the previous scene and add to dissolve the text overlays at a specific point in the dialogue. For scene 7, I indicated to switch to B-roll footage of the university where I was completing my master's degree. I carried forward the previous instructions about my name and the music. In scene 8, I return to the talking head format and simply indicate to keep the music and my name on screen. For scene 9, I switch to B-roll of the stone wall and indicate to maintain the blur and slow motion. The slow motion movement will help to keep the viewer engaged while they read the question that I asked to be added as an overlay. I also suggest the question to be on screen long enough to allow the viewer to read the question. In the notes, I indicated to maintain the music but remove my name from the screen. For scene 10, I return to the talking head format where I conclude my main message and invite the viewer to connect with me. I note to maintain the music and return my name to the screen. Scene 11 is again B-roll footage of the stone wall, and I indicate to maintain the blur and slow motion. I ask to add a text overlay of my contact information, and I note to add the LinkedIn logo at the bottom of the contact information. I again suggest allowing the viewer enough time to read the screen. Scene 12 is where I give credit to the musician by identifying the artist, the song, and their website. This is also where the videographer included his logo. This can be helpful in case someone else wants to book their services. And finally, scene 13 was the blooper reel. A blooper reel is entirely optional, as I said, and should be used with discretion. The videographer added this as a surprise, and I loved it because it showed my true personality in an unscripted way, so I kept it. And as I mentioned before, the staff at the company where I was hired because of my video resume said the blooper reel was their favorite part of the video. Again, it's optional, and you can even create one with and without the blooper reel, depending on your intended audience. There are no rules. You'll notice that there is a fair amount of crossover in the notes, so you simply need to cut and paste what you want, and it will help to keep you organized. For each of the visuals, I simply used a screenshot from the video indicating the scene changes. But since you'll be creating your storyboard before recording the video, you may choose to draw a visual or use stock images just to get you started.